Hello, welcome to Fireside Chats. My name is Magla Pillai, and today's topic is learning to play the game. In this series, we look at a variety of topics surrounding the subject of spirituality. We look at what makes a human being tick, what hurts them, what causes them to heal, and how we can enlist spiritual knowledge and help from the divine in order to heal. We ask you, the viewer, to specifically look at what your relationship with God is, whether you are happy with your relationship with God, and how you can make this particular connection deeper. I'd like to introduce you to Sister Denise, who has been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for 4 decades. Sister Denise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The title is rather cryptic, so tell us, what game are you referring to?
You know, this word game and gaming is becoming more and more popular and more used for as an analogy for so many aspects of human activity.
Yes, I particularly am entranced by the expression, this is the end game.
Well, right. And so the analogy of chess, the analogy of whether the game has rules or is it a game without rules, this one is coming on. You know, we always are used to think of the rules of chivalry, the rules of war, but nowadays you start hearing about there are no rules, anything goes. And that is a little bit scary for people, because it's felt in a general way that, you know, you have to, everybody has to follow certain ways of doing things, and otherwise there will be chaos. But we have the situation now where people are actually saying, yeah, it is okay for there to be chaos, and even if it's not okay, there is chaos, so you better manage a game without rules. But I think that there are rules which are not created by humans, and those rules are important to understand, because if you don't know those and you decide to operate the game of life without rules, you're going to trip up a lot. So I think getting to know those rules is a very important part of our education.
Not many people have the acumen to understand the game of life. Not many people understand that how to manage a bank account, whether when you look at somebody you can take what they are saying at face value, or should you look deeper than that, should you investigate. Now, how does one move from ignorance to knowledge in this department, especially if most people surround you are themselves clueless about what life is and what life isn't, and if you're surrounded by people who are also spiritually ignorant?
I think it's important to give yourself a fair amount of time to try and assess in your surroundings who's clueless and who has a clue, and what sort of games are going on, because that's your context. And if you can give yourself time to assess that, then you're better able to navigate it, because then you have to create your own rules. And so you need to really understand how the game works, how things are. And it's a game of you know, human society.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you get a lot of different messages from different people, and some of those messages are, they're telling you the way things are, but there are many messages that you receive which are deceptive. For example, take fairy tales. A lot of fairy tales are giving a message to the young people about life, and it's a sort of a utopian, romantic, false message, and then that child goes along assuming that that's true until there is a rude awakening which is actually a betrayal going on from one generation to the next repeatedly. And so because it's so fixed, you can say that that's part of the game, that a child will be betrayed by the older generation no matter what, and that doesn't sit well.
Sure, that's very loaded. A child will be betrayed by the older generation no matter what.
Another thing that happens is that the adult generation looks at the next generation as a substitute for itself, and it will say, well, we didn't do very well, so let us give our wisdom, through which they failed miserably, to the next generation, because then that way they will succeed. Now, it is clearly stated in the World Health Organization that to continue to pursue a course of action, regardless of the fact that it fails, is a sign of insanity. So you have a kind of inherent insanity going on in this, what we call as, I don't know, received wisdom or something, that is handed down generation after generation, which makes everything worse and worse and worse, in the conviction that it's going to be better this time, because we'll do it more, we'll do it harder, we'll do it, more intensely, and that therefore it'll succeed. But it's never really considered that the approach, the assumptions, the way the game is being described by the generation that is in power is fundamentally flawed and has to be really relooked at. And this is why whenever I've been engaged in any kind of educational activity, my target is never the young, it's always the adults.
Is that where the problem lies?
That is where the problem lies. People say, oh, we don't want corruption. Corruption is bad. Now, children are not corrupt. They become corrupt as they get to be adults. How do they get corrupt? They get corrupted by the adults, who are the very same people who say, oh, you are in danger of getting corrupted, so we will protect you from it. In the name of protecting, you actually contaminate. So, you can say that when you've got a trend that is so set, that the rules are, we're going to betray you.
It doesn't help, does it, if somebody likes you writes a book on what the game of life is? Because everything that you just said is not articulated, not in any book that has ever been written throughout history. It just is, and it's what comes to mind is the British Constitution. It's unwritten. But it's real, and it exists, and an entire society is ruled by it. Is that the way it works? You just stumble through life and then you realize, in future I shouldn't do this. Is it trial and error?
I think a lot of people operate by trial and error, and they also operate in a context where circumstances are quite hostile. And so people who have managed to figure out how to manipulate the innocent community or the innocent members of society, then they will exploit, you see, and they will be successful, and then they will get all the accolades. But the karma that they're doing, they will still have to pay for it, you see. So what seems to be working isn't. And then on the other side, you see, you get statements like, well, honesty is the best policy. And I remember one time one young offender had said to me, the good book says that the truth shall set you free. So I told the truth and I ended up in jail. So you see, the innocent ones are they're in a state of confusion, because of these things. So what I think is very interesting is for us to take a look at not the unwritten rules or the written rules that humanity has created for itself, but what are the laws governing human behavior, the laws that are like natural laws, the laws, what we call sometimes the laws of spirituality, the laws of karma, the laws of the universe, how things move, you know. And there we have to be very dispassionate, because when you're looking for truth, it very often does not validate your assumptions. And so even then, in a situation like that, in research, you will find serious researchers actually deleting results that invalidate their assumptions, you know, and you're trying to push your idea of what reality is on people, but you're betraying them, you're deceiving them. But then the problem is, if you say it isn't the way everybody thought it was, then they will push you out. So this is the difficulty. So I think that what you have to do is really go step by step and get into discovering as best as you can what really the game is. And you know, there is another interpretation of the word game, and it is like a dance or a ritual. You know, there is the machinery of human life which is going on over the course of history in the human world, and all of the people are part of that machinery. And what we need to know is, how is it going? Where is it going? So that you can then decide where you fit and how you're going to navigate it. But if you think it's going somewhere that it isn't going, then the way that you handle yourself will be unsuccessful or ineffective. So I think it's very important to understand the game, which we say the game of life. You know, what is it all about? I mean, most games are about competition. Recently, people were talking a lot about win-win situations, which is a nice positive approach to things. And if you go for a game that is win-win, it's humanitarian, it's virtue-based, and so on. But there are many people who will prefer to sabotage that. And the way the world is going is how you can say the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Where is it going? It's going to breakdown. So if the nature of the game is it leads to breakdown, then comes the question, then what? You see. And after breakdown, what do you get is restructuring, resetting, whatever. So so you have to also see as long-term as possible. And I think this is why it's very useful in the game to say, you know, I am an eternal soul. I have been around for all of history. I've reached here. I'm going into the indefinite future, and I need to play my role, play my game in such a way that, you know, I win, but not at everybody else's expenses. And there is a phrase that is there in India which I think is very helpful in this. And the phrase is this: when you rise, everyone else rises. When you fall, everyone else falls. So there you are positioning yourself in the game as an influence, as a leader, as the one who causes everything to go one way or another way. And so if you say, okay, well, right now, if I'm a leader, you might not be in a leadership position, but you might still be a leader, because anyone who follows you, that means you're a leader. Anyone who gets influenced by you, you're a leader. So you don't have to have a bunch of visible followers. You just have to be, you know, recognizing yourself as a trendsetter, as one whom people do look at and follow. And it is said in spiritual practice, whatever it is that you do, other people are going to be watching you, and they're going to be doing likewise. So consider yourself to be a leader and set the tone, set the rules, and the game will go that way, because then you are, in a sense, as a game master. And in the world of gaming, in computers, virtual reality and all of that, people are really working on these things. And so you have virtual reality and actual reality getting merged. And I think this is a very interesting new development in the human experience. And then bring that into day-to-day life and really understand yourself as a game master, and bring the game to the best conclusion that you can imagine.
Sister Denise, as you speak, the phrase law of karma keeps popping into my mind. How does one, in learning the game of life, use the law of karma to your own advantage, while settling your past debts at the same time?
You know, one of the problems people have is they point the finger at other people and they say, you shouldn't be behaving like that, you're doing bad things, it is wrong, and they try to get people to behave in a way differently from how they are behaving, and they never succeed. Because one of the rules of the game is that the only person you can change is yourself. The consequence of changing yourself is you actually change the game. So, knowing the laws of spirituality in that way, you will then start being totally focused on yourself. And the corollary of that is, if you are wanting to win the game, then when other people are doing things that you think are not right, and you just use all your time and energy to try and make them behave differently from how they are, you need to change that and say, okay, well, I'll, let you get on with your life, have a nice day, and I will take steps forward. You see, because what happens is, as soon as somebody is moving forward and getting success, everybody starts looking at them. And that is the best way to distract people from what it is that they're carrying on doing, which you may think is a waste of time or negative or whatever. Going in there and trying to change them has never succeeded.
So, Sister Denise, in learning the game of life, we carry with us our personalities, we carry with us our past trauma. Say in case you were betrayed by somebody who's not in the same culture, not the same race as you, and this person stabbed you in the front, as it were. That is the definition of a friend, by the way, someone who stabs you in the front. So then in your mind, because of your traumatic experience, you say to yourself, as of now, I'm no longer trusting somebody who belongs to this race, this culture, this gender, this age group, this family. Okay, so you find yourself in the position where you have a prejudice based on bad experience. Okay, so we carry all of this. Every person has established their own rules and regulations of life. Some of this we take forward with us until the grave. Some of it we let go and modify and learn new rules of the game. How do you know, when learning the game of life, what to let go of, what to modify, what to take forward?
You know, it's interesting about a trauma is that the circumstances that led to that trauma and the consequences of that trauma, the residual damage done by that trauma, that's going to come up again and again and again and again in your life, because that's your Achilles heel. And this is where you have opportunity to learn a lot of lessons. And you can choose to say, okay, I'm never going to trust this situation, but it's going to follow you for the rest of your life. So there's some kind of a message in there which says, you know, taking the attack of not trusting is a very superficial way to handle it. You need to go deeper, you need to work with it, you need to know that this situation is coming to teach you something about the rules of the game. So look at it as a messenger and try to find out, try to discern what it's telling you about life. Learn that, because this is where you need to move forward. And in fact, you can't get to the next level of your personal evolution until you have figured out this one.
Let's bring the subject of God into this. I assume that God is God because he understands the game. Okay? Did God invent the game? Is he also a role player within the game? When one spends enough time with God, does he tell you what the rules of the game are? Or show you?
I don't think God is the one who made the game, but you know, there's some interesting phrases that you can consider, you know, because God says, okay, I know the game. I am the creator, director, and main actor in the game. So then you say to God, okay, what is the game? And the answer that you will get is the game is all about getting close to God, which makes you reach the very best condition that you could ever possibly get and attain the highest status that is possible. And then it's also about losing that and moving away from God. So there is this aspect of the game. It's like an ebb and flow through the wider time span of eternity, of getting closer to God and further away from God. And when you reach the extreme, a little bit like a pendulum, when it gets as far as it can go, turns around and goes the other way as far as it can go, and then it comes back. So, you know, the game as God presents it is, it's a game of victory and defeat, of success and failure, of achievement and loss, of truth and falsehood. So I think part of the message of God is understand the game, and within the pairs of opposites that the game is about, find your place of equanimity. And if you do that, that is to win the game. But when you're talking about the game as it's played in the world in a worldly way, the rules of the game don't seem to be like that. The rule is more like winner takes all, finders keepers, losers weepers, and it's all about I get everything and everybody else gets nothing. But that's an illusion, because the real object of the game is to find your equanimity in the face of all these extremes. And it is by doing that that you become on the same plane as God, which is really the prize for understanding the game. You become like God, you become close to God.
Sure. That is a very powerful note on which to end today's episode. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sister Denise has shared a very powerful message on what it means to understand the rules of the game. I think what sits deepest with me from today's talk is that once you understand the game, you are on the same plane as God. And I don't know if that's something that you aspire to, but I think it's a dream state for me and for many of you who are watching. So, I hope that you are able to hear and understand what today's message was about, and I hope you sit down with pen and paper, if this is how you would like to function, and ask yourself, what have you learnt about life that works for you and what works against you? And because we are all alive, we need to understand the rules of life, and also ourselves and also other people. I think we take too little time to understand. So Sister Denise has left us with a very clear and powerful message, and I do wish you everything of the best in your own spiritual journey. Thank you and goodbye.